Alright guys, gonna try to finish up the dome light harness side today since I have to custom build it. Steve had already bought new dome light housings, and they come with the lenses. They come with bulbs, but they didn't come with any screws, so I got out 4 number 8 stainless steel screws. They look like they're, I don't know, maybe ½ inch or something. They may not be that long, I don't know. Anyway, to plug these in, to wire them up, you need a bullet style connector like this. And I usually buy these packs at Walmart. They're very inexpensive, but they'll come with a male and female. That's the female side, and the bullet plugs into it. But all you need is the male ones. Now, I'm not a fan of the plastic insulators on any wiring anymore. I like to remove that and use just heat shrink. It looks a lot more professional. So I've removed the plastic shielding off of 4 of them. It pulls off. You just slide it right off of there. But anyway, I need 2 bullets for each one, so I've done 4 of them, and I've got my heat shrink pieces out. They're not going to be that long. I got to cut them down. But anyway, now these come, and this is the way they were originally. They have a white background in there with just a regular old bulb in there. These aren't LED or anything. Now, white paint up in there, it does make it reflective, but it also makes it look yellow when the light's on. So if you painted these chrome, like spray paint chrome, or even silver, it would look more bright white and probably be just a little bit brighter. If you've ever taken new model cars apart, taillights apart, you'll notice that the inside of them is chrome plated. Well, there's a reason for that. There's a reason why they don't do white. So anyway, if you want yellow, go with white. If you want bright white, go with chrome or silver. Now, I'm not going to paint these. I'm just putting them in there. But I have never tried the LED ones either. I have these regular ones in my car as well. So I'm going to get going on this. I started building this harness, and I need to finish it. So there's clips in the body up here. There's clips in the body up here, and everywhere there's a clip, I doubled up the tape so it has a, a little bit more chafe prevention, we'll say. I pulled the wire out. I left it a couple inches longer than it needs to be, but you can coil it up in there. So I'm going to crimp on 2 bullets and heat shrink them. And then over here, I pulled this piece in and I cut these wires, and I stripped them back pretty far, and that's so I can tie the 2 whites together and 2 oranges together. And then I'll pre-fit the bullet, and then I'll trim that wire down as needed. But anyway, this is going to be wide into each other, and then it comes out the front right up here. So I've made this, and I've got orange wire and white wire, and it has clips in the body. So everywhere the clip is that the wire goes in behind, I doubled up the tape so it had a little bit extra chafing protection. So I've left it long over there, and you can coil that up in there. There's plenty of room. I've got to slide a couple pieces of heat shrink on the wire, and then crimp on the bullets with my American Auto wire crimpers, and then heat the heat shrink down, and that side will be done. Now on this side, I've pulled this harness through on this corner here, and it comes out, and then I've got the other harness coming in this side, which this was all one long deal, and I just cut it. So I stripped these wires back pretty far, and the reason is I'm going to be tying these together, tying the 2 whites together and tying the 2 oranges together, and then I'll pre-fit the bullet and trim down as needed. So anyway, these will be wide into each other, and then it comes out here. Now, thankfully, the other shop had put in a fish wire, so the fish wire is a hole in the cowl or the roof up here, and it comes out back behind here. So I'm going to tie up. I got to dig all that out because it comes way out and goes outside the car. I got to tie that up with tape to this, and then I'm going to cut off this part where they've tied it. I'm going to cut it off where it pulls through nicer. Anyway, I'm going to try to pull all that wire out back through there, and then I'll have to feed it back up in through here and up with the rest of the tail harness back up toward the front. But anyway, the dome lights, they just mount on with Phillips screws, 2 on each one, so pretty simple deal. So when Steve has his headliner put in, whoever does it, they'll obviously have to take the dome lights back out, but it's just 2 wires and undo the bullet connectors, and it's easy peasy. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull all the taillight stuff out of the car. we had talked about doing an LED conversion for his car, but I don't know that he ever said let's do it or anything like that. But if we're not, I need to paint the inside of these, inside, you know, the cast housing here, chrome in a can, so it reflects a little bit more. These taillights on these cars with just the old 1157 bulbs, they tend to be a little dark in there. So if you go in and paint just that insert, you know, like spray paint chrome, it reflects a lot brighter. It's a night and day difference. And it's just kind of a budget way. Instead of going with LED, you can just go in there and, you know, paint that insert chrome. Don't paint the whole thing chrome, just the insert there, what the bulb will pick up inside the tail light. But I'm going to go ahead and take this apart, and these backup lenses, I mean, no doubt they were new at one time, but them things they're not in good shape. They fogged out, and there's like little bitty tiny cracks in them. And the sun was on these one day, and you could see the tail light was kind of not very nice either. These don't look bad in the shade though. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and take all this apart. There's actually a rubber boot thing that goes on the back that is missing. And when I was going through a bunch of crap about, I don't know, 3-4 weeks back in my shed, I actually found one of them little boots that's repop. So I'm going to go ahead and take all this stuff apart, you know, restore that taillight deal so it's brighter, and make sure the boot goes on the wiring part of it. So this is the electric gas door stuff. So there's some stuff in here that's, you know, it's been messed with. And these little brackets are so bad rusty, they need to be painted. And I think I'll change that screw out with stainless. It looks like they put stainless in here, but they used countersinks, looks like. Anyway, just going to do a little work to these, and they definitely need to be brighter so he doesn't get rear-ended. Well, I tried to use some chemical paint stripper that I had here, which was actually aircraft remover, which used to be really awesome stuff. It was like the best. There was nothing that could beat it. Then they removed something out of it, and it ain't worth a flip. So after doing 2 coats and putting it in a plastic bag, it didn't really do much. So I washed it off with a hose, but that stuff is garbage, man. Anyway, a friend of mine, Scott Smith, sent me a text the other day and asked me if I'd ever used Aircraft Remover Ultra, and I'd never heard of it. So I went in and ordered a quart off the internet. Hopefully it'll get here pretty soon. That stuff was like $42 or something. It better work, is all I gotta say, for a quart of it for 42 bucks. But it supposedly works like the old stuff, like it used to, but we'll see. There's quite a few tests on YouTube that I watched a few years ago because I got into that problem. I went down and bought a brand new gallon aircraft remover, and I noticed it wasn't working. So I went in and got on the internet, and somebody had went and bought all kinds of aircraft removers, or well, paint strippers. Aircraft remover was one of them, and they tested them all. And anyway, so just about every one of them you find at Lowe's, Home Depot, or whatever, hardware stores, that guy tested them all. There's a couple different people that's done it. But anyway, pretty much nothing works like it used to. They've taken so much crap out of it where it doesn't work very good anymore, but hopefully the Ultra does. So what I've done is I put a couple of screws back in this and put it back together, because now I have to go into a smooth firewall and re-drill the holes back out for these studs. And I got to re-drill the holes out for the heater hoses, and I have to try to figure out which holes under there they welded up are the ones I need. There's also a hole here. This would be the front of it. This is what you would see hanging underneath the dash. And there's a hole right here that a very large Phillips screwdriver goes in, Phillips screw. And right about in here is, behind the firewall pad basically, is where I had a little rubber grommet and a hole drilled to run the coil wire, the coolant temp sense wire, and the oil pressure sensor wire. Now I'm not going to be able to use that because I think that's going to occupy the same space. So This is what happens when you do it one way and you turn around to do it another. You just run into more stupid issues. The worst part is this stud right here between the heater hose outlets. I did locate it on the firewall back there. Now luckily they welded it from the outside in, and you can kind of differentiate in here where some holes used to be from their booger welds they've got in here. So I've circled it with a silver Sharpie right here. That is almost dead middle of the 2 screw holes for the flexible transmission dipstick that I installed on there at his house a long time ago. So now guess what? Can't have a stud going through that bracket. So now there's 2 holes existing in the firewall here. So I don't know what in the hell I'm supposed to do now. They welded metal on the back side of a firewall to cover up the holes instead of butt welding them. So you can imagine how deep that filler is on the firewall. So when I go to drill these out, guess what kind of problems might arise on that? The filler's probably going to chunk out. So if you guys are going to plug holes in a firewall, please butt weld your stuff in there. Don't do it like this garbage here. So anyway, these have to be drilled out. Now I got to figure out what to do with the stud. And there's another one up in here somewhere I got to figure out. I think it's this one. And I've got to go in and grind these down so I can get a drill bit on there, because I have to drill them from out back here. I wouldn't be able to find them out front without making a paper template and all that kind of crap. I'm not doing that with the engine in the car. So anyway, over here is where I had a rubber grommet and some of those wires going through I was talking about. And there's got to be, I think this is the original screw hole. So I'm not going to be able to run them through there now. So I'm going to have to put a little plug in that or something. I mean, this has turned into a crap show, man. So it's pretty frustrating that at every corner I turn, it is nothing but problems that I have to figure out. So if you're going to build a car, mock it up. So the only thing I can think of is on the stud is I'm going to have to relocate this to a different point. It needs to be in this area here, but I need to get it away from that. So I need to cut this off, drill a hole and put another stud in here, because that one is obviously not going to work where the bracket for the flexible transmission dipstick goes. Alright, so I had to mock up the old heater core back on the plate, set it down in there to kind of get an idea. So you can see the back side of the studs here. There's one right there that's clear of the heater core. The other one's over here. It's just a little bit underneath it. So this is the one that is going to be a problem with the transmission dipstick bracket. So I'm thinking about moving this over in this area down in here. It should work pretty good, but it's clear the core support and everything, and that way I can clear that flexible transmission dipstick. Man, what a mess. So anyway, I just need to mark an area, and then I need to see if the flexible dipstick is going to be, like, I don't want the stud going through and hitting that itself, the tube. So anyway, I'm going to draw a little line right there for where the heater core is. So I know somewhere in this area here I can put a stud. I've got to re-sandblast this because it's surface rusted, which it didn't blast it very good anyway the first time. So anyway, I'll blast the marks off. And in case you don't know, if you put a Sharpie mark on something and then you put paint over it, the Sharpie will bleed through, so don't do that. So I've got stud, and I did talk to him about replacing these studs with stainless anyway, so I guess I need to go get some stainless steel bolts to stick in there. So the one that goes up there, that's going to be a problem in itself, because I have to try to drill where a booger weld is. And if you've never tried to do that, like, this is all oblong shape sticking out because it's welded. That's one of the factory holes. So anyway, this factory bracket that's spot welded on here is a little bit of a problem. So I'm going to try to grind this flat and even with that first, and then spring punch it and then drill it. The problem is when the drill bit goes through the other side, it's probably going to chunk paint and filler and everything else. So there's no telling how deep the filler is on this firewall. All right, so I'm using a couple of different step bits here. So I drilled the firewall from the back through with a little bitty tiny, I think it was an 1/8 inch, might have been smaller than an 1/8 actually, drill bit this way. And anyway, so what I'm doing now is I'm using a step bit and I'm going in here and starting to open this up. These have to go pretty big because the heater core ports have to come out. The problem is it was getting hot, so I don't want to sit there and keep going with it getting hot because it'll delaminate the paint around it and it'll just chunk off there. So anyway, having to work with painted and bodyworked surfaces is really silly. So this is one of the stud spots here. So I started going into it, and of course the step bit that I'm using is old and it's dull, so it's taken it a while. And it got it pretty hot, so I went ahead and stopped. I probably need to go get a new set, is what I need to do. But I've got to figure out where to put that stud for this part, because as it stands, the factory one comes out right about in here, and that's where the bracket, the L bracket, goes. And anyway, if I move it down, the flexible hose goes down here like that, so it's going to be right in the way of the hose. So it's just, this is the type of stuff that you spend hours trying to figure out what to do. You got to problem solve, and it just kind of sucks, man. So I really, man, I'll let it cool down and I'll go back and drill some more. So I went through my stainless bolts, and I only have 2, which I need 2 for this box here to replace the studs. Now, these are 1.5 inches from the factory, about 1.5 inches long, and they always hang so far out of the firewall it looks terrible. So I always change these out to 1 1/4 with stainless steel. So what you would do is go in here with the grinder. I'm going to use my little 36 grit Norton Blaze disc on my angle grinder. I'm going to go in here and grind this down until it pretty much disappears, and then at that point the stud will fall out. And that way any grinder marks you get in the metal will be on the backside, and you won't see it on the outside, which it doesn't matter anyway. This goes up against the firewall, nobody will ever see it. But you can weld regular stainless steel bolts to steel. It will hold, it'll stick. Now what I would advise you to do, if you're going to do this, is to polish all of this stud on a buffing wheel first before you put it on there. So polish the threads and all that to where this is real nice and chrome looking. And I usually work that end over a little bit because these are kind of dimply looking. I usually smooth these off with a Scotch-It disc on the angle grinder. Smooth it off pretty good, and then when you buff it, it looks really nice and flat on the end. Anyway, I'll stick that bolt in there and I'll weld it up around the head. And then when I go to paint the box, I'll put masking tape around that polished stud and then paint the box and then pull the tape, and you got all those chrome looking studs sticking out of there. Because you see this sticking out of the firewall with a nut. So you could use acorn nuts probably, but I don't know if the studs might still be too long to use an acorn nut. I don't know. I've got some here I can kind of experiment with, so I could go in and grind the ends of these down until the acorn nut actually fits. Because I do think an acorn nut out on the firewall look very, very clean. That way you don't see threads. If you ever notice, you know, high-end show cars, you don't usually see threads. You don't see studs sticking through. You see cap nuts and you know, they reverse stuff to make it look better. Now on my car, I changed on my hardtop, all my studs are stainless steel, just like I showed you there, and you got to change the 3 in the blower housing as well. I also changed them out on the brake lever here. Now I only have 2 because I'm using a modern style master cylinder. It only has 2 studs, so I just cut off the other 2. But I put stainless steel bolts in those 2 as well. Now you could weld square nuts on the back side of your flange, but it'd make it a little bit difficult trying to line it up and get the bolts started from out here if you wanted to put just bolts on the outside instead of studs. But anyway, those threads on your master cylinder are 3/8 by 24 fine thread. Well, I ordered a multi-pack from eBay. I think this was like 15 bucks or 17 bucks or something. And of course it's a multi-pack, so you get more than you need. But I'm going to split these with Steve and use some of these on my wife's car, my wife's 55. Anyway, these are stainless steel, so I'm going to go in and polish these and basically use those on the master cylinder mounting there. So it'll look really nice. You won't see any studs. But anyway, on my car, I didn't put acorn nuts on the firewall in this heater box. I've got 12-point ARP nuts on there, and you can actually see the stud, but I don't mind. It just, that's kind of the way it was from the factory, and I'm good with that. But some people would want to take it to the next level. But if I'm putting acorn nuts on Steve's master cylinder, I'd kind of like to match them up over there on the heater box stuff as well. But I'm going to have to go to Tractor Supply and get some bolts. And the problem is I'm a little bit tapped out to spend money this month anyway. All right, so I polished the basically the stem part of that, and then I sanded off the end and polished that so it's nice and smooth. It's not all dented or chopped looking on the end of it there. So at this point, I ground the head off of that one until it disappeared and knocked the stud out. So anyway, you would pull that up in there and then weld that head to the box from the inside. And you have a polished stud sticking out. The problem is there's still paint on this and I need to get it blasted. Now I could tape that up and blast it, but I would rather go ahead and blast this first and then go in and weld that in and get it done. So I gotta wait until that paint stripper comes in, but I have to relocate this other stud and I've got to do a little bit more figuring to figure out where I'm going to put it at to keep it away from that flexible transmission dipstick. Anyway, I'm having to open these holes up just a couple of steps at a time because I don't want to overheat the area from the drill bit spinning and delaminate the filler and the paint. So anyway, I still have to open these holes up a lot bigger. I've got this one opened up pretty good. This bracket, it may go on there. I can tell you I'm about half tempted just to build a whole new one myself and paint it body color because I got a few things to paint body color anyway. So I custom made mine on my car. Mine looks like it's part of the firewall. I didn't use that L bracket crap like that. But this just sucks, man. It's a bunch of problems and you got to try to fix it and it has to look good when you're done, and that's the whole thing about it. So I got this blasted the rest of the way, and I got one stud welded in it, and I just put the heater core in there just to make sure nothing was hitting that stud that I put in. So I need to figure out, I need to put that bracket on the firewall, and then I need to figure out where I can put this stud so it doesn't interfere with the flexible transmission dipstick tube, which is right here. Because this has to go down in here like that on the bottom of the bracket. So I have to make sure it's not gonna, that stud's not gonna hit that. So I guess I just gotta get that bracket on there. I need to open up them holes first, but metal's probably cooled down enough to hit it one more round. So I sent a text to Steve like a week ago to find some heater box parts. There is a guy that he knows over there in his town he lives in. That guy has a lot of Tri-5 parts. And so we need to get a few heater box parts. But this main deluxe heater box housing I've prepped out. And I actually welded stainless steel studs in here. And I had to relocate this one. Anyway, it's all blasted. I actually had to chemical strip these, and the chemical stripper I got ain't worth a crap. So I ended up blasting this, and I used a whole bunch of media just trying to get this one clean because there's so much paint on them. But anyway, I ordered a quart of paint stripper, and I'm waiting on it to come in to finish out the rest of the heater box parts. But there's some more parts that I actually kind of need because somebody had kind of made the heater box assembly, it looked like, from all kinds of parts, and there's a whole bunch of extra screws drilled in it. There's also a really bent up blower motor housing. Anyway, I had to relocate one of the studs on the firewall, or the heater box, and I did stainless steel bolts and polished them, so that way I got a polished stainless steel bolt that'll be hanging out the firewall like factory. Now, Steve was going to do vintage air for a long time, and then after he calculated the cost of buying the unit and paying to have it installed, he's not going to do it. He just said put the factory heater box back in. He didn't care. So I had to drill some holes in the firewall, and I'm still not done with these. I'm drilling like 1 or 2 little steps at a time with a step bit. This has to go a little bit bigger, but I'm letting that panel cool down, because if you keep going on it, it'll get hot and it'll delaminate that paint and filler. So I just have to go a little bit at a time. I do have the holes drilled in the firewall for those 2 studs. I had to relocate this one because the original one was going to come out and hit this flexible dipstick. And that is the new low-car transmission dipstick, and you can actually pull it out and put it right back in there. That old cheap one that we had on there, it wouldn't go all the way down in the trans. It was hitting something, so no matter what angle you pulled it or did, it just didn't want to fit in there for some reason. So today's project, I'm going to try to clean the contacts on the horns and make sure that these work. I'm going to bench test them, make sure they work, and then he's got new chrome covers to put on his horns, but I need the insulator plastics to go around up there, so I want to get new ones of those. Alright guys, so the dome light switch is not making contact, so this is one that was already in his car. Anyway, it's got some pretty bad corrosion back here on the back, but the other thing I noticed is I've never had one make a sound before, so I've cleaned a lot of these, taken them apart and cleaned them, and it's pretty simple to do. But anyway, we're going to take this apart and see what is up with it. So anyway, you got to get under here and pull that. There's 4 little ears here, and you have to bend them straight, and then this will come off, and there's a spring inside and some other little goodies. Hopefully I don't stab my finger. I've had a bunch of these apart and I've never seen an insert in there before. So this is something new. I wonder if these are new. These look like they might be new, or had been replaced at one point, I don't know. Anyway, you have a little contact right here on this little ear that sticks out, and of course your spade on your wire goes down in through there, gets its contact in there, and then you have this stuff here. Well, you have your plastic piece there, and then you've got this 4-sided piece that goes on there, and it gets contact on all 4 of these sides. So if you're taking apart them originals, you'll want to use like some Scotch-Brite and clean all 4 of these contacts right here up. You need to clean this up real good right in here, this, at least the insert. I clean up the whole thing, but definitely need to clean up the rolled edge in here. And then this ear contact needs to be cleaned. And then this is kind of tough to get to, but I usually just take a flat blade or a pocket screwdriver and go in there and just kind of pick at that a little bit, just to scratch in a good contact, because it has a piece overlay in it. You can't really, oh, that's what's loose. That moved real easy. Yeah, that's what's... So this is not getting a good contact because it's... That rivet is not riveted real good. That's might be what the problem is, but it does have a lot of corrosion underneath the edge of it. And then you'll have to clean the inside of this out, which I have a Dremel wire brush attachment. It's a little small thing. I put it on my drill and go in there and clean this. If you're doing originals especially, you can make this plastic look real shiny brand new by using Mother's Mag and aluminum polish on a microfiber rag and just sit there and work that, and it'll make this plastic look brand new again. Anyway, put a little bit of dielectric grease, if you have some, on the parts, and that way it kind of helps keep the corrosion down. But anyway, these are zinc plated, and there are some GM cars like Oldsmobiles and Buicks and some of the Chevrolets. They had, in Pontiac, they had stainless steel outer pieces here, which you can just lightly sand and buff on your buffing wheel. It'll look like brand new pieces. So when I go to a salvage yard and they have a lot of mid-50s GM cars, I usually go through there and try to find all the stainless ones, and I'll get them out of them, because that stainless steel, it looks a lot better than this old zinc. See how this zinc is just corroded and it looks like crap? I think I'm just going to have him get new ones because the corrosion's real bad on this, and plus this rivet is not riveted, and this one wasn't make contact anyway, and all these contacts are clean, so it's definitely something faulty on it. I haven't checked the other one yet on the right hand side of the car, so I don't think these are very expensive. I'll go in there and look, but I think we just need to get new ones. I don't have any spare stainless steel ones. I had got some for my wife's 4-door, and last time me and my friend Scott was out at Perky's, I got a pair for the 2-door post project, but there's probably more there. But if we happen to go to Perky's, I'll grab a couple, I guess. Alright, so what I did, this is still as original. I went ahead and bent these tabs out a little bit because this just falls in there and it's kind of sloppy. So it's like it doesn't really have any tension on the sides. So I bent these tabs out just a little bit. And this little ear right here, it's supposed to be in an angle, and it was kind of straight looking, so I bent it up a little bit. Anyway, I'm going to put it back together and see if I can get it to work bench test wise. Using some dielectric grease here. Might as well make a mess if you're going to do something. Have to get me some pliers. little flat tab in there is creating a lot of problems. These reproduction ones are definitely sloppy. The originals are real easy to mess with. What a piece of crap. Alright guys, so I got his dome light switch put back together, and it wasn't working before. And I took it apart and kind of tweaked around on it a little bit, greased it, put it back together, and it still doesn't work. So this is just an aftermarket piece of crap. So anyway, I went over to my bench and I have one in here. I think this might be one that I did a how-to video on, how to take these apart and clean them and all that. It's in my playlist because my bag says cleaned and working. So anyway, the zinc plating is pretty rough on this, so this would have to be painted if I was going to use it on a, you know, like a painted car. Anyway, so I got my meter here. It's set on squawk where it beeps at you, and so I know it's working. So ground the housing there, stick this up there on the power. It's beeping at me right now. No more beep. That's what his is supposed to do. So you're gonna have to get new ones again, I guess. I'm pretty sure that one off of his car is a reproduction because I've never seen that little insert piece in there. But oh well. At least now you know how to fix one or mess with one. Alright, so I shot that with some chrome spray paint, and it'll just make it a lot more reflective. It actually makes a pretty big difference, especially when your original, you know, cast metal housings are dulled out and they're like a dark gray. So it works pretty nice. Now I need to unmask it, I guess, but anyway, the cork seals to me are the best ones. You can get cork, you can get black foam. I like the cork, but you definitely need to paint with the same chrome spray paint. It doesn't have to be my brand, just any kind of chrome spray paint. You need to paint one side of the gasket, and that's the outward side of it. And the reason is, when you put that clear new backup lens on, you'll be able to see up in there, and you'll see that brown cork outline. So anyway, if you're gonna do this, be sure and paint your gaskets like on a piece of cardboard or something separately. You don't have to flip them over and do the other side. You can put the cork side to the housing, but make sure you do the edge and the inside edge of the cork thing as well. But this makes a big difference, guys. I've tested it before in the dark. So this teardrop shaped cutout is for your steering column, which goes in here. And you know, generally your steering columns have linkages on them, and that's what the top's for. So you turn the column when you go to slide it down the steering box shaft. You have to get your shifter linkage up off the top to get it to slide in, and then you can turn it. Anyway, they've welded up this side piece over here because there's a hole here, and then they've also welded up the holes that actually pin in the seals. There's actually one big seal, and then there is a trim cover, rubber trim cover that goes on here. They actually left one hole, so I don't know why you would weld up those but not weld up that one. But I'm kind of glad they didn't, because I've got to figure something out here. So when you put your steering column, you go to put it in the car, you have to slide on this new sponge seal on the end of your column, but this has to be on there too. This is what you see after it's all done. This is actually designed to be clipped on here with little push clips that go on there, and this is what makes it look nice from underneath the dash. But this piece goes on first, and then this goes over that. But these have to be on your column before you install them. So they welded up the holes except the one on the bottom, which is that one right there. So I have no way of attaching this because they welded up the holes. So I could re-drill the holes, but what I thought I might try, because I mean, let's face it, it does look good smooth out there, but what I think I might try is taking some steel and basically building a perimeter frame that matches this, like some strap, and just cut it to where, you know, weld them together where it's one piece here, here, one across the top, one down here at an angle there, one here at an angle there. I actually don't need it on this one. I can just do up, over, and down like some strap, and then I could drill holes in the strap that line up with these holes, these four, and then I could use a countersink bit and countersink it and use countersink screws, and then just weld the countersink head to that and grind it, then panel bond on that frame on the firewall right here where the studs are sticking out. And then this could be installed with acorn nuts that I could paint black and put on here. So this would actually fasten to the firewall. But I really don't understand what they expected to do as far as welding the holes up, all of them but one. So I'm kind of trying to figure out what I need to do on that side of it. You're playing with fire when you're drilling a hole in a firewall that's already been bodyworked and painted, because the paint and the body filler can flake out or chunk out, and if it doesn't cover with the head of the bolt, you know, you're just kind of in trouble. So drilling it would be the easiest way, but doing the frame and panel bonding it on there would be a good alternative. That way you still have a smooth firewall. I mean, before the car was painted, there should have been bolts welded to that on the inside down here. That way these could slip on like studs. That's exactly the way I did my hardtop, my wife's four-door, and a 56 Chevy four-door that I had before that. And that's the way I'm going to do the two-door post as well. But anyway, this is just more of the scratch your head, try to figure out what to do, since another shop done work on this. I've got to figure out what their plan of attack was. So they welded up all the holes for the firewall pad, which that can be spray glued on. But this, it kind of sandwiches that, and this is always kind of bulged out a little bit because of that thick seal. So, you know, this really needs to have some kind of fastener on it. So I don't know yet. I don't know if I'm going to drill it or build a frame. I guess I'll see what Steve, if he cares if there's holes drilled in it. I mean, I can put some stainless steel button head Allens from the outside coming this way, just drill the holes out. That way this could be fastened with the, you know, a button head on the firewall side and then an acorn nut on this side painted black. But that's exactly the way my car is done. I have washers and acorn nuts, and I painted them black. So because this is black, you know, I don't want any shiny bolts on this. But anyway, what I did was I took bolts and I welded them. I stuck them up there where you could see the head of the bolt through the hole in the firewall on the outside, and I welded it up. So that left me with a stud basically sticking out. And I did it for my firewall pad as well, because the firewall mounts with those same Christmas tree style clips that this does. So actually the 55 ones are like metal saw teeth looking things that really chip your paint. So more work, more figuring out to do. All right, I'm going to talk about this. So the underneath of my roof on my 55, I used black chrome dynamite. I've got black chrome dynamite all on the floors, all on the roof and everything. And that stuff, you You know, this past year or two, the prices really went up on the real Dynamat. It's gotten really expensive. So Steve got the Summit branded. I don't know who makes it for Summit, but he got a big box of that. And the plan was to use it underneath this roof in here before his headliner goes in. This makes a huge difference. Problem is, this stuff is not very sticky. I knew when I took the backing off of it, it wasn't as sticky as Dynamat. You can like push your finger on and off of it and it won't stick to your finger. This stuff would work good on a floor because it's laying down. But as far as being upside down on a roof, it's not going to work. It's letting go. You can see where it's letting go. And I used a roller on it. And I prepped the roof as well. I wiped it down real good with Windex on a microfiber rag and then blew it off and everything. So I prepped the underneath of the roof and made sure it's, you know, it's not covered in dust or something. But that stuff is not sticky enough, so keep that in mind. If you're going to try to do underneath of your roof, get a name brand sound deadening mat. That one is just not, it's not going to work. So I'm going to have to talk to him about this as well and see what he wants to do, but this ain't going to work. It's already let go. It's been up there for 4 days, I think, 5 days. It's not going to stay. So that stuff, it's not the end of the world. I can use that stuff back here on the rear floorboard, on the rear deck. You know, I might be able to use it on the sides of the car. It might stay upright as long as you got a door panel covering it. But if you put it on a roof and then you put your headliner in, if over time that starts letting go, it's going to droop down in your headliner and you're going to see lumps up there. So anyway, it's just not going to work. So buyer beware. Don't get the Summit brand or the really cheap stuff, because you get what you pay for. If you're going to do the bottom side of your roof, get the name brand stuff, because I know for sure Dynamat works. That's what's under mine.